Hey, thanks for joining me. It's just been far too long since I looked at another issue of Planetary. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I know I say that every time, but I have to when I feel like it's important to mention about what kind of books I love so much. This is one that is just near and dear to my heart. And I would blow through these books a lot quicker, but I don't seem to get a lot of traction in terms of views on these things. I mean, whenever there's an X-Men or a Batman or a Spider-Man or something, way more popular, of course, that draws eyes. But the Planetary books, like a lot of other lesser known books, don't get kind of the views on the channel. And so, I try to have a variety of stuff for people to look at. But I don't know. I don't know why it is. I love these things so much. And there are the people who do watch the videos on Planetary and mention every time I put them up that they're big fans of it, and they always look forward to the Planetary reviews. So I'm just going to get into it. We're on issue 14. It'd be kind of hard to completely sum up everything that's been going on in the Planetary comic, but simply put, we have a character, Elijah Snow, who started out as a guy just kind of like a lost drifter that seemed kind of like a drunken loser that was recruited by the Planetary team of Jaquita Wagner and the drummer here to join their organization that was privately financed by a person they call the Fourth Man. No one knows who or what he is. And they wanted the exclusive use of Elijah Snow's knowledge, which is extensive and goes back for years. He's a lot older than he looks, and he has superpowers. It'd be dumbing it down to call it he has like ice powers, like Iceman. It's not exactly that. It's heat subtraction. He doesn't shoot ice blasts from his fingers, but he can cause anything he touches to suddenly freeze over. Meaning like if his feet are touching the room, he can freeze the walls and the air and everything around it and you. So it's a kind of a subtle power, and it's not exactly a hyper lethal power, but it can kill you. So it's just interesting that, they recruited this guy. And so they go on all these adventures discovering weird, unknown, mysterious things that's set in the theoretical Wildstorm universe. I've mentioned several times how I'm guessing that Warren Ellis, the writer, kind of said, yeah, I'll set this comic book in the Wildstorm universe. You bet your ass I will. And then he proceeds to write and almost never, ever make mention of any of the Wildstorm universe as you would know it at the time. Because I think, honestly, Warren Ellis don't give a fuck. He wanted to tell this story, and this is just the means to get it published. Like, yeah, this is the same universe where the Wildcats and Gen 13 and Wetworks are running around. Sure, you betcha. We're just never going to mention them because compared to the stuff going on in these books, this is infinitely more interesting, and those guys are boring as shit. But the most interesting part of the book is that as we go along and see all these adventures and these hidden things that are going along in the world, you find out that there are these really scary villains just called the Four. And it's just an evil version of the Fantastic Four. And it became one of my most, intriguing concepts to me to take this wholesome, wonderful kind of comic series of these great characters and make them the villains. And the way that Warren Ellis writes them, you almost never see them. And when you do, you only see them for bits and pieces. The most interesting thing is that you see the aftermath of the horrible things that they've done. And then, like I said, you see one or two, you see them here and there. We've seen the Human Torch version of the character in the book more than anybody. We have not yet seen the Thing. We've seen the face of the Reed Richards and his Sue Storm, but we haven't seen the Thing yet. And it's all about their cat and mouse game. Planetary wants to stop them. The Four considers Planetary nothings. They're just this small little organization that provides some kind of interest, but they're not really a threat. And we've been jumping back and forth in time. We have discovered, it was revealed in, I think it was issue 12, that the mysterious Fourth Man was Elijah Snow. He just had his memory erased somehow, some way, somewhere. He is the guy who owns and runs and operates Planetary, which is kind of weird because why in issue 1 was he a lonely drifter and Jaquita and Drummer come and recruited him? And it wasn't until after some time these memory blocks got, dropped out of his mind and he got all his knowledge back, and it's revealed that he's the guy who's in charge, he's the leader, and he's the one running everything. So it kind of makes you go, well, then what's happened? And so the time frames do now jump back and forth into what is in the comics time frame, the modern time, but then it'll jump back in time from when Elijah Snow was running Planetary proper before he got his memory wipe put upon him. And that is what we're looking at here. So we're in some place out in the middle of nowhere. There's some kind of facility. There's a flash of light, and there's a voice that says, the truth is in here. And so there's two separate voices. One voice says, it's a stick. What's this got to do with the abductions? So the other voice says, it has a central core of dense subatomic machinery. It has residue of bleed radiation on it. It's not a stick, or at least it's not only a stick. So two separate voices talking. They're like, what is this? So then we get a shot of a guy, a bald guy in a wheelchair. He's got this giant metal glove mounted up here, and he says, let me show you, shield your eyes. So using the giant metal glove, he picks up the stick, picks it up, and taps it on the ground. In a bright flash of light, the mysterious bald scientist guy in a wheelchair removes his goggles or his glasses and says, there. And we see what is clearly, obviously, a version of the hammer of Thor. Now, this is one of those things that I actually really find intriguing and interesting, and they do it in Planetary, where they're taking concepts that we know and we're familiar with and giving a weird spin on it, even if it's just a little bit. So this is Thor's hammer of some type. What does Thor have to do with anything? And it took me a couple of reads on this thing before it occurred to me that I'm like, bald guy in a wheelchair? Is this supposed to be Professor X? Is there going to be like an alternate universe version of the X-Men in this? Like, okay, and now I'm super intrigued because I like these alternate versions of these characters because you can do anything wild and crazy with them because they're not the actual official versions. So you can do anything. And it'd be interesting to see what that would be like. So we cut back to the scientist guy. He says, retract the sleeve. And so the little metal glove goes up. He says, our supposition is that it's part of a virtual arsenal. The stick and this, the hammer, are counterparts connected by and he kind of pauses and he says, I don't have the math, Elijah. Call it a quantum thread, some permutation of superstring theory that I can barely grasp. Take an ordinary object, somehow link it to a weapon stored somewhere across the bleed, give it a sharp jolt of kinetic energy to trigger the relay, and voila, multiversal transposition. The cane goes there and the thing comes here. So then Elijah Snow is there, obviously, with him. He says, well, how do you avoid getting your arm burned off every time you need a whatever this is? And the scientist guy says, by being superhumanly resistant to damage. So then the bald professor guy says, this is an artifact of the Four, and it was found in the vessel that Ambrose brought down in Brazil. I surmise that Kim Suskind must have been aboard. So Ambrose is one of the members of the Planetary team that is missing, presumed dead, and Kim Suskind is the Sue Storm of the Four. So they're kind of talking about this alien vessel that they found in a previous issue and just basically putting it together that this device they found is a weapon used by the Four. And so this is what Elijah Snow is intent on stopping. And again, this is Elijah Snow before he has the memory blocks placed on him. So this is him before we met him in issue 1. He's got his faculties, he's in full command of his faculties, and he's trying to stop these evil Fantastic Four. He says, what's on the other side of this whatever, where this is stored. And so the scientist guy says, I can expand the transposition effect into a gate. I've been readying a team to go in. The old field teamer game, as are some of the younger. And so Elijah Snow says, no team, Professor, just me. So right there, they're kind of implying like this is a Professor X, and he's got a team of some kind of people ready to go on some adventures. I would love to see a Warren Ellis version of the X-Men or whatever they would be in this universe. Spoilers, you absolutely know you never will. It's just the slightest little hint in all these characters, the evil Fantastic Four, and we've seen versions of like the Shadow and the Godzilla monsters and the classic Universal monsters. We've seen Dracula and Frankenstein and things like that. All these things that they throw into the book is like alternate versions for these characters to play around with. The idea that there's a Professor X and the X-Men in there fascinates me. But no, we will never get to see what they're like in this, which is unfortunate, but I get it. It's not about the X-Men. But I like how Warren Ellis just throws it in there just to tease us. He's tickling our balls just a little bit. So Elijah Snow gets in this basically like a containment suit, and the professor's saying, all right, get in the suit, get ready. We're going to transport you to wherever it goes. Whatever it's going to be like, I don't know. I don't know what's on the other side, but off you go. So they activate the device, a swirl of energy, a flash of light. Elijah Snow is gone. We see him transporting through the bleed, which is, I've mentioned the bleed because they've mentioned it in the book. It's a concept that's basically the walls between universes that Warren Ellis has set up in these books, here in Planetary and in the Authority. And that's always represented by this red kind of color field. It's whenever you go transport between different universes, you have to cross the bleed, and there are people in spaceships that sail the bleed like an ocean, traveling the bleed ocean to different universes. It's a really interesting concept that Warren Ellis throws out there. But Elijah Snow arrives in wherever these weapons were stored, like they were saying. You take the stick, tap it, and it swaps places with the stick where the hammer is stored. Now, this is where it diverges from the Thor mythology. Yes, it's like Thor's hammer, but this is not Asgardian Norse mythology of any type. It's just one of what looks like hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of weapons stored somewhere. You see that John Cassidy gets to draw just infinite weapons just floating there as he walks upon a pile of skeleton bones. And he just looks, and it just goes on and on forever. And he says they killed an entire world, so they had somewhere to store their weapons. So once again, they're illustrating just how evil and heartless and conscienceless the evil Fantastic Four are in this universe. This used to be a planet full of living people, and they wiped them out just so they could store these collections of weapons that they've gathered probably from different universes. So now we cut to the Antarctic, and then there's a shot of just an ice sheet, and then there is a building sticking up, and on the doors is the symbol of Planetary. This is like a stronghold of the team that is the good guys of the Planetary group. So there's the door, and I thought this was such a outstanding example of visual storytelling where we don't need any words anywhere, like text boxes everywhere telling us shit. You just let the artist show it. And what we show is we get that same shot of the door and the seam with the Planetary logo, but then there are what are obviously like grips of fingers from a left hand and a right hand gripping each side of the door, inserting their fingers into the steel and then just ripping the doors off like they're nothing. Boom, they're gone. We're inside the structure. There's like a access port that you open up and you see little water droplet footprints. This is how we kind of track that someone invisible is walking through, comes down the access port onto the ground, and then we get into this like heavily like red light area with these tubes of weird, gross creatures. And then materializing into view is a female figure. This is the Kim Suskind is her name. This is the Sue Storm of the evil Fantastic Four. There she is. The big goggles are something important. Warren Ellis is all about kind of scientific accuracy where he can, because he's all about the science. Flip it over. And so she's on the phone with somebody, presumably her husband, the Reed Richards. Randall Dowling is his name in this universe. She says, it's Kim. They have our children, just as the leak suggested. I don't know quite how they got this good, but this is beyond the pale, Randall. And then suddenly, Kim, like, her phone is gone and her goggles are ripped off, and just a flash of hyper speed. Boom. So the goggles and the phone are gone. And then a voice says throughout the corridor here, it says, so those are the secret. I often wondered how you could see, since light would simply pass through your eyes. No goggles now. That means you can't turn invisible without going blind. Welcome to my world, Ms. Suskind. So they're saying, like, some people talk about the reality of turning yourself completely invisible, like the Invisible Woman does. Well, yes, it's all about bending light, refracting light, and if light would pass through your eyes, then you can't see. So they're addressing that. She has to have these goggles on to see when she turns herself invisible. She says, Snow, I don't need to be invisible to cut off your... And so she puts up as is the thing with the Invisible Woman, she can go invisible but create force fields. So she creates a dome and spikes around her. And she's getting threatening. And so then Elijah Snow over the intercom says, Mr. Chase, remind our guest of where she is. So this is Ambrose Chase. Again, this is like when we were introduced to the characters in the modern time. He is a member of the Planetary that, as we understand it, is dead. But this is jumping in the past, and he has some kind of reality distortion warping powers. And they do it with this awesome wiggling effect, which I don't know if they did this on a computer or just had John Cassidy draw it. I'm going to assume he probably just drew it. He's that good. But his distortion field warps towards her, shuts off her force field. She freaks out. Her eyes are warped. They're capturing her, distorting her body crazy. And she screams. So the phone that she was on, Randall, her husband, the Reed Richards, he's like, Kim, oh Christ, holy shit, we're on our way. So then Jaquita, she's the one who's, she can move at super speeds. She's the one who ripped off the mask and the goggles. She's right there. So on the phone it says, Jaquita, it'll be Leather first. Are you ready? Leather, William Leather, is the Johnny Storm of the Fantastic Four. And they're saying, all right, we caught her. This is a trap that they're laying for the Four. And they're like, the Human Torch will be first. Are you ready? She's like, all right, bring him on. Drums, are you ready? And so Drums is like the science, also magic kind of brilliant guy of the group. He's like, he's on his way, impact at this destination. He's coming at 135 kilometers an hour. He's on his way. Boom, exploding through the ceiling is the Johnny Storm. He's yelling for Kim. He's like, Kim, where are you? And Jaquita just punches him in the brains. And she yells at him because she's like, no good unless you can see it coming, are you? Not so tough when someone ambushes you, you goddamn sneaky piece of shit. So Jaquita has a score to settle because she got her ass beat bad by the Human Torch here. The Four are profoundly powerful, and in just a straight up one-on-one fight, no one's going to win. But Jaquita is super strong, badass, and when she sneaks up on him and can beat his ass and just keep punching his brains in, they can keep him down. So there's Snow. He's like, excellent, Ambrose, keep the field active on Suskind. I've seen her explode people who lost their concentration for a second. She's more dangerous than Leather. What's his status, Jaquita? And she says, I hit him in the brains every 20 seconds or so, and he remains laying down. So Elijah Snow, he's kind of proud. Like, their plan's working. They've now captured 2 members of the evil Fantastic Four. He says, very good, you've all done superbly. Now get them into restraints, get to the next staging area, and we can assume now, we can now draw Green and Dowling out. So basically the Reed Richards and the Thing, we can draw them out. And so he's calling to Drummer. He's like, Drummer, are you ready? Drummer? Are you there, Drummer? Overhead shot of the facility of Planetary with the giant shadow and this incredibly awesome shot. This reminds me, like, I don't know, I had something out of X-Files, where just suddenly there's this giant, silent flying saucer just hovering over, and you can see how big it is. This is a vehicle that the Reed Richards character is inside. They captured his wife. He's coming to get her. He's pissed. And this just made me, like, I've said this before in my previous reviews, this makes me like the Fantastic Four even more. I haven't read a lot of comics from them, but it just kind of reinforces how dangerous they can be, especially if they were evil. I love that shot. I love the tilt, the Dutch angle, the color. I like that it's silent. There's no words, no text boxes, no sound effects. It's just fucking there floating silently above them. It's brilliant. And then a little just device of some type points at the ground, and then you get a long faraway shot of the planetary headquarters, and the ice cracks, and then it just picks up and removes a giant section of the ice. They just pick up the entire planetary facility. The entire underground base itself is just picked up and removed, just scooped off the surface of the planet. We cut to a little bit while later. It's all black, and then a light comes on, and Elijah Snow is captured. He's restrained. He's beat up. He says, come on, Dowling, I know you're out there. What is this? And then you see this shot of the Reed Richards character. He says, it's a game, Mr. Snow. Now, what's fun is in previous issues, we've seen just the slightest microscopic hints of this conversation. We've seen this shot one time in one book before, just hinting at something. And a few bits of dialogue, but now we get to see the entire conversation. So Randall Dowling, the Reed Richards, says, it's a game, Mr. Snow, but you see, you and your people are just a little too good at it. If you're not careful, you may graduate from amusing pest to serious annoyance, and we can't have that. So here are the rules. You submit to the placing of a sequence of blocks in your memory, just enough to prevent you from being quite so useful, and go away. Go and hide, or I kill your team. Excuse me. I also got to say, I love the grayscale color tone on here. It just makes it feel like lifeless and scary. But he's like, I'm going to put some blocks in your memory, and you can just go run away. But if you don't agree to this, I'll kill your team. And so Randall Dowling says, we are old and powerful and bore easily. We enjoy the game Planetary represents, but we cannot allow ourselves to lose, Mr. Snow. So, say yes, Dr. Dowling. And so Elijah Snow says, make your blocks good, or else I'm going to come back and kill each of you one by one. And so Randall Dowling says, we won't meet again, Mr. Snow. Your team can hear you if you have any last words for them. And so Elijah Snow just sits there silently for just a minute, just a moment. And he says, don't you dare come looking for me. I mean, don't even think about it. But do not let these bastards win. These are orders. Goodbye. And so that is the end of the issue. So it basically sets up just how good Planetary was when he was at his peak abilities, and how they captured him and wiped his mind, the why and the how, which puts him on a course of life for a couple of years, which leads to where the team comes back and finds him, which starts back in issue 1. And as is the case with every issue of Planetary, this is one of those books that eventually got delayed more and more and more as time went on, where sometimes up to a year or more in between issues would come out. And I loved every issue because he just doles out just enough information to keep it profoundly fascinating to me, but then raises more questions and like, holy shit, I want to see more. And then, but who knows when the next issue will come out? It could be 12 months from now. And so it says next issue, and it says, nope, not telling, just leaving you on the like, holy shit. If you're invested in the story and following along, you're hyper like, oh my God, this is so interesting. What now? Where do we go from here? How is this going to get resolved? The 4 here are unstoppable. How do we resolve that? I don't know. I do know because I've read the entire series, but at this point, I was so into this. I say it every time. Warren Ellis writes some of the greatest stuff, and this is probably my favorite thing he's ever done. I love Planetary with everything that I've got inside me. The story, the art, the way that it's told, the mystery, the adventure, the fun. It's so great. And John Cassidy, you know, rest in peace, Mr. Cassidy. Incredible artist. This is probably the best thing he's ever drawn. I absolutely love it, in case you couldn't tell. So that is all I've got for issue 14 of Planetary. It's just absolutely fantastic, and I can't hype it up enough. And I say this every time. If you've never read it, go get it. I think you'll enjoy it. And it has reread value because each issue is different and takes you on a different adventure, ultimately all coalescing into one overarching story by the end of the series, which is issue 27, I think. It all reads as one big narrative. It's fantastic. I love it. So that's all I got for Planetary number 14. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.